This is the Be One Change One podcast, where our mission is to help listeners define values, practice integrity, and inspire change.
Our vision is to mentor men and empower them to achieve more by taking responsibility for shaping their own lives.
He's Cass, an evolving man who has been shaped by adversity and continues to grow through his imperfections.
And he's Roscoe, an imperfect work in progress that tries to suck less every day.
Between us, we have over 40 years of Air Force fighter pilot experience with countless hours as trainers, instructors, and mentors.
Join us and learn to take responsibility for your own life as we dive into subjects from leadership to resilience to vulnerability.
Be the one who changes their course. Be decisive, driven, and purposeful. Set the example for others. Lead. We wish we'd had this show when we were younger men.
Be the one.
Whenever we start talking about Flash Baysden, she says he's the guy that could read the phone book and make me laugh.
Oh, probably so. Yeah. That's nice for you. Let her know I said hello.
I will. Cass, Flash was the mayor in the Eagles at the 334th at Seymour when I was a B courser, and he named me Hillbilly.
Hillbilly.
That was after I got named Ricky Bobby at Pensacola. Then I got named Hillbilly, and then I ended up with Roscoe. So I think you can kind of see the theme here.
Yep.
And I still remember that stupid picture that you put up in that naming ceremony of that skinny ass hillbilly on the porch. It's a black and white picture of a hillbilly like smoking some homemade cigarette or some shit, and it goes, "That's him."
He's got sound grass in his mouth or something.
That's funny.
That's crazy.
Matter of fact, awesome. I talked to Tails several years back. He's like, "Hillbilly's out here." Well, like, yeah, really? So he remembers Hillbilly.
Yeah, no, he was the wing king out here for a little bit at Luke, and then he actually for about 10 seconds he took a job with Lockheed, and I saw him in the building walking around, and he hangs out a lot with a couple of the dudes that I still work with. So yeah, I hear all about Tails and his adventures out here in the valley, and yeah, he's doing good. Awesome. Well, dude, hey, welcome to the show, man. Flash Baysden, he and I go back a long ways, just like a previous guest that we just had on, nearing 20 years. I'm not going to read this boring shit off of the website over here. I'm just going to go off the top of my nugget. And Flash was career Air Force airman. Started out as an enlisted dude, commissioned, was a Strike Eagle Wizzo, ended up going to weapons school and then retired. And now he still teaches the B course out there, still teaches the next generation of fighter pilots and Wizzos coming through in the Strike Eagle and the EX we just found out. And he's also part of this really cool thing called the Bandit Flight Team that I know we'll get into. Civilian formation flying. It's really awesome. Saw him doing the flyover to the Richmond NASCAR race not too long ago. And that's kind of what piqued my curiosity enough to call him back and get him on the show. So welcome, Flash.
Thanks so much, Roscoe, man. It's great to be here.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's good to meet you.
Yeah, it's good to have you here, brother.
Hell yeah. Thanks. Well, dude, I don't have a script. If I could show you my blank piece of paper in front of me, you'd see that I have no notes. I usually don't come prepared. That's kind of my MO. Cass has probably got a bunch of nerdy studies over there and wants to know your IQ and all that. And
I call time.
I got an image to uphold over here, man.
That's right. Keep playing the dumb redneck.
I got a reputation. Speaking of dumb rednecks, Flash, you're born and bred North Carolina boy, right?
Yeah, man. I was raised in Eastern North Carolina. That's where I was born. Small town right outside Camp Lejeune, Jacksonville. And
did you drink the water?
Yeah, we drank the water. It was a town of perfect water back then. This was back before they knew dry cleaning agents cause cancer or something like that. Either way, it worked out pretty good. But we grew up there, and my dad got a contract in my early elementary years of school, and we moved over to Saudi Arabia. So we lived in Jeddah. We lived in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia from right up until my middle school years, all 7th grade right there. And then we moved back to that same town. And then I went to school there in Richlands. And when I went to school there in Richlands, dude, I found one of my first loves, was playing golf. And that's what I actually ended up doing. And that's how I went to college initially, was on a golf scholarship to play golf.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, dude, it was awesome at the time. It was awesome. 17-year-old kid sitting out there on the golf course playing with 50-year-old men, trying to think they're younger than what they are, thinking I'm older than what I am. And I was able to go to Mount Olive College. You probably remember Mount Olive College.
I remember Mount Olive, yeah.
Yeah. It's now Mount Olive University. But I was sitting out there, and one of the defining moments, everybody has those, core memories they take back. And I was playing golf one day, and I was doing okay. Wasn't doing great. I was doing okay. And they brought in this 12-year-old. And this 12-year-old, he beat everybody. He was the medalist the entire golf tournament. And at the same time, for those of you who don't know, Mount Olive is initial for runway 08 at Seymour Johnson. So I look up and I'm like, this is probably not going to work. If I can't beat 12-year-olds, this is probably not going to work. So I'm like, I think I'll go join the Air Force. And I went to my advisor and said, hey, I'm going to join the Air Force. And my advisor tells me, he's like, hey, I understand you want to join the Air Force, and that's honorable. He says, but stay in school, finish school. And I'm like, no, I've already went to the recruiter. I'm gone. I'm leaving next week. And he says, okay, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm going to go fly. He said, I don't know what the recruiter told you, but they don't let, just airmen fly airplanes. I'm like, no, I'm going to fly. And that was the first path of my journey to start flying. And, he was absolutely correct. They don't let airmen fly airplanes. So
yep.
We worked on that for a long time. So I did enlisted as a F-16 avionics technician there on the flight line. Went through Pope, Shaw, Korea, Aviano, all great bases. Met a lot of great people. And it's funny how you meet all these great people and it just ties back in to where, your journey begins and ends all at the same time. So I get my commission out of Aviano and go to Maxwell, get to Seymour Johnson, perseverance, knowing I wanted to be a Wizzo the whole way through. And that's where it started, man, with Seymour Johnson, out to Mountain Home, back to Seymour Johnson, weapons school, got to tour out of Lake and Heath, go through Nellis. It's phenomenal, man. I had a great, great time. Go to war. That's good.
Dude, where, how long were you enlisted?
Man, I was enlisted for 8.5 years.
Okay, so about the year, if you laid your career and my career over each other on a piece of paper, they're almost identical. I was enlisted. Yep, I was enlisted for 8, and pretty much did the same exact darn thing, man.
Yeah,
for almost exactly the same reasons. I mean, all the way back to why we joined and all that. So that's unique. You don't see that very often, man. Go ahead, Cass.
Well,
yeah. No, go ahead, Flash. What were you going to say?
You don't see it a lot, but you do see, because I get to deal with a lot of younger people that still come in. And I bet, maybe 2 or 3 people a year are prior enlisted to have that same type of transition. And it just, whether or not you really want to do it. Because as you know, Roscoe, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do.
No, it sucks. There's definitely, especially, I was married and had 3 kids. I don't know where your family fit into that timeline, but I was married and had 3 kids while I was doing my schooling and all that. And that made it a little extra challenging. Being an enlisted guy on the flight line in the Air Force is not the easiest thing just in and of itself. And then you start piling on these other, added degree of difficulty for each thing that you pile onto this pile. And man, sometimes it sucked for a couple of years there.
Yeah. Well, for the listeners too, if you're not a military member, you wouldn't know this, but both the path that Roscoe and Flash took is a difficult path, right? Like it's because, well, and part of the reason why I think too is, when you have 8.5 years already invested in a career, to make a pivot at that point and go, I'm going to go to OTS and I'm going to try this other thing and hope it works out, kind of a thing. Like, dude, that's you're betting on yourself to a certain extent, which is awesome, right? That's always good to do if you've got the requisite skill sets. But I would imagine that for both of you guys, like there was probably a little bit of fear involved in that, right? Like that was probably scary to a certain extent to make that pivot, and kind of leave that community, that culture that you knew behind. Yeah. And and to, let's be honest, right? Roscoe, you've even talked about this on the podcast, brother, but there's, you kind of get the hairy eyeball from some guys that are like, well, dude, why would you want to be an officer?
Snake eye hard,
right?
man.
You get that shit, right? Yeah. So you get a lot of pushback, you get, people look at you differently, you get judged for it. And
you do.
Yeah. And so my point in saying that though, is like, tell us a little bit about that experience for you, Flash, because the bottom line is that one of the things that we try to stress to guys on the podcast is man, at some point you just got to do you, and you don't, right? You got to get in the arena. You got to get dirty and muddy and bloody and beat up a little bit, but you got to try, right? Because it's easy to live with no, but it's not so easy to live with what if for the rest of your life. And
That's
all
right.
the guys in the
You're absolutely
stands,
correct.
all the guys in the stands that are throwing spears and, chucking tomatoes at you and giving you the stink eye, screw them. They don't fucking matter. They're not doing what you're trying to do. They don't, right? Like at some point you've got to be able to just push through that stuff. So explain that to us, Flash. What was that experience like for you, brother? And what were the things that let you kind of stay on path?
Yeah, I was, well, first off, when it comes to all that, whether you're enlisted or whether you're an officer, you're still you. I mean, that person doesn't change. Excuse me. Your experiences that you experience in there will change. So there are some people who believe they are, hey, I'm going to work on airplanes and that's what I do. And you're exactly correct, Cass. 8.5 years in, you're established in a community and you're very comfortable when you go to work that day. And there are some people, when you let them know what your path is, and that path that Roscoe and I took, and I'm very certain about Roscoe as well, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a 4-year process of once you make up your mind and how that's going to be. So I went to Shaw, and we got shut down at Pope. And when we got shut down at Pope, they said, "Hey, we're going to send you to Cannon." I'm like, "I'm not going to Cannon." I'm like, "I'll go to Shaw. I'm not going to re-enlist." They're like, "You're not going to re-enlist?" I'm like, "Absolutely, I'm not going to re-enlist, not any whatsoever." They're like, "Well, let's send you to Korea." I'm like, "Nah, I don't really want to go to Korea. Just send me down to Shaw, and I'll do a year at Shaw. I'll be done my enlistment. I'll quit." And I was going to go back to school at that time because there were a couple of people that I rode around on the truck with that were specialists, Dick Scrubber being one of them, Richard Schreiber. Remember Dick Scrubber? You ever run across that dude?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We were all like from North Carolina trying to figure out our way, and we were going to do this degree completion thing, try to go ahead and finish up our degree. Well, I go down to Shaw. Scrubber goes down to Shaw, and it's a different world. The Air Force is different when you PCS away from a base that you're not enjoying, and then you get to a base that you really do enjoy. And I enjoyed the mess out of Shaw. I mean, it was awesome. So I had to write a letter for a CJR. For those who don't know, it's a career job reservation to allow you to re-enlist so they don't give your job to some new enlistment dude coming through MEPS out there. When I got my CJR, re-enlisted, I went to demo team for Shaw, the 9th Air Force demonstration team on the East Coast side, and had a really, really great experience. And that's when I thought I could make a career out of this. Well, amongst all that, I got married. And once you got married, you're like, okay, this is a family deal. I'm bringing somebody else with me. Let's really buckle down. And so with her help, I was able to continue that route, finish college. And about 6 months prior to me doing what I did, Scrubber did what he did, and he became a Wizzo and all that. And I just kind of kept in touch with him. Hey, man, what's this pathway? How do we do it? Even though we were separated geographically, we kept in touch. Didn't have the interweb back then, but we kept in touch. And so once you figured out this is the path and what's required, the Air Force, I'll be honest, has some really great educational assets available that will keep you, hey, if this is your goal, this is how long it's going to take, and these are the people you have to navigate through in order to do that. So we did. And when I got to Aviano, before I even went to work, I went to the education office, said, hey, this is who I am. This is my career path, my degree path. How can we complete it? And so they're like, go sign into your squadron. We signed into a squadron. And my squadron commander at that time was General Goldfein, Fingers Goldfein. And so, I at that time, maintenance was under ops. They were all together, and so Fingers had just got shot down. And he's all, happy to be alive, meeting everybody. He's just the happiest guy in the world. And that dude still remembers your name. Even if he doesn't, he acts like he does and he says it correctly. He still remembers your name. You know what I mean? And I told him what I wanted to do. He's like, we're going to make it happen. And we did. And so I got my commission out of there. But there were people, and Roscoe will attest to this, they may like the F-16 and they may like the flight line, but there's some people just don't like officers. That's all there is to it. Now, they respect them, they work for them, they do all those things, but it's just not their gig.
Yeah.
They like the lifestyle. They'll never, and they ask you, why would you ever want to do that? And it's not for the pay, it's not for the money, it's for the path, that path. And when you really want to lead and do those things that experience offers, it's really the best way to do it.
Let me see if this sounds familiar, if you can relate to this, because I've been exactly where you are, man. And
yeah,
my experience was very much the same. Changed a couple of details here and there, but what I found though, dude, when I looked back on it, right, and I couldn't really see this in real time, but I definitely noticed it years later when I looked back on it, is I had ambition. I had a path that I was going to follow. And Cass, man, you nailed it, dude, is you don't really know what's behind door number 2. It's sealed shut. And until you kick that fucker open, you don't really know what's back there.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean,
really
hell, I didn't even know a navigator and a Wizzo were the same thing. And it took a lot of Googling for me to figure that one out. But it's kind of, I don't know, it's like the further, you know, it's over there and you don't really know what's over there. But when I looked back at the people that I surrounded myself with on the enlisted side, and then when I made that decision to cross over, and once all the paperwork was done and it was kind of final, you know, I was ecstatic, man. I was like over the moon. I was so proud of myself and so excited for this new adventure for me and my family. And I can't help but think that those guys gave me the stank eye like they did out of jealousy. And some other things had happened along the same time within the last year or so before I crossed over. I was a fast burner, dude. I made tech at 6.5 years, and I lost some friends over that. And one of the guys that stopped talking to me was a guy that we studied together. Like, we studied the same exact stuff.
Wow.
And I'm like, why are you mad at me? We studied together, man. I'm sorry I retain knowledge a little bit better than you do, or maybe I test a little bit better than you. It's not my fault, you know. If you knew that about yourself, you should have studied harder. I don't know what to tell you, but you know, and I don't mean to cast shade on any of those people that were around me at the time, but that's really what I think it came down to, man, is they looked at one person on one hand who is content working that flight line for the rest of their life, and another person on another hand who just kind of was itching for a little bit more, was always looking at the horizon and going, no, what's over there? Let's go check that out.
You're absolutely correct about who you surround yourself with, because when I found there was an avenue, or there were people, because I wasn't the first one, obviously, right? There were people who were able to make this transition. You befriended those people through education services, or you know, they were different career paths, and then you got to learn the steps. Hey, do this, don't do this. Try to stay in touch with this guy. He's the one who does this thing for you. Okay, that's great. But when you absolutely have a little bit of support from maybe one or two people that are on your side in your work center, that makes all the difference there whatsoever.
Yeah, I had one person who was kind of he had my back on some things.
Yeah.
And when I say he had my back, he was my cheerleader. He couldn't really open any, like I had asked, hey man, can I go to one of the back shops for a little bit just so I can focus on school? Can I go to QA for a little bit so I can go focus on going to school? Could I get this FTD teaching job for a little bit? Could I do something other than the flight line? And their response was no, but we'll put you in the truck. So they made me an expediter, which is one of the harder jobs out there as far as using brain power, you know. So I guess that comes, you know, when you're good at your job, what's your reward for hard work? It's often more hard work.
Yeah.
More work.
Yeah, that's kind of where I ended up. But I did have at least one cheerleader who was my rah-rah guy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well,
we had a.
Go ahead, Flash.
I would say we had about the same thing though.
Yeah.
Two people in there who really knew what my path was. They're like, we're going to do it, and I was able to quit going to work. The Air Force had a program where you just went to school full time.
Oh, was it that LEAD program or something?
This is Bootstrap.
Oh yeah,
way back in the day.
Yep.
So
there was a handful of them. I think it's still around. At least some version of it's still around.
Yeah, possibly. And if you didn't get picked up, you owed back 2.5 times every month that you were out.
Okay.
So the Air Force had you for 2.5 times for every month that you were out.
Did they pay you E5 pay or something like that?
Yeah, you went out at your current rank. Yeah, so
Okay.
I was a staff sergeant then. I was E5.
Right on.
You just went to school full time. You got no benefit from the Air Force. You just got to quit going to work, and you went to school full time. So that was really good.
That's cool. Well, just to tap back to B1 Change One, I think both of your stories, what it relates is having a little courage over comfort, right? Like, because like you're talking about Flash, like, and even you, Roscoe, guys on the flight line, so it's easy to get comfortable in the role you're in. It's easy to just pick up and play the role that you have, right? And because you know the expectations, you know the people, you know the job, you know the grind. It's just it becomes, you know, the daily battle rhythm. But it takes courage, right? It takes a lot of courage to go, you know what? I'm going to do a complete pivot here. I'm going to flip 180 and go in a completely different direction. And not only that, but like Roscoe was saying too, the amount of effort and discipline that it probably took both of you. Because dude, when you're working full time and you're going to school full time and working and doing that kind of stuff, that's not an easy task. And then you throw family or relationships on top of that. I mean, you got things pulling you at every corner of the shirt, you know what I mean? So, yeah, like my hat's off to both of you guys for that, because I think it took a tremendous amount of courage for you guys to make the decision that, hey, I want to move in this direction and this is not the norm, but I'm going to do it anyway.
You're absolutely correct. And talk about the support system there. You would be amazed at the people who knew you were doing something like that. And I don't know if it was really out of jealousy or, you know, not everybody's going to like you, but the amount of naysayers, people who say, you can't do that. Not you.
Oh, yeah.
You're just a guy riding around on a truck, you know.
Yeah.
Well, because it's not normal, you know.
I'm living proof that you don't have to be the best to do something really good. you don't have to be the best.
What do I say on here, Cass, all the time?
Yeah,
dude, I say all the time. I was like, you don't have to be the shiniest penny. Sometimes you need to be a penny when they need a penny. Yeah. That's it.
Well,
and I might be a busted ass, chalked up penny with gum stuck to it, but by God, I was a penny.
Well, let's be honest. Like luck and timing do play a part in everything, right? Because, you know, if any of us would have been on different timelines in trying to do what we wanted to do, but they weren't, they didn't need pilots or Wizzos at that time, we would have been told, thank you but no thank you, right? So luck and timing do play a role in everything. And so that's another reason why you got to have a little bit of resiliency and be consistent in going after a particular goal, because, you know, it may take time. It may just, the luck and timing may not be on your side, but it may be in another year or two, you know, so you just got to keep pressing forward and trying to get to where it is you want to be. But I wanted to ask you something too, Flash, because one thing you said at the very beginning was, you know, like you made mention of the fact that when you look back on your time in the Air Force, like you can see all these people, and it's almost like a circle, right? Like these different people that had impact in your life that probably showed up later on in your career somewhere as well, right? And you kind of talked about the people you surround yourself with. So tell us a little bit about the role that like mentorship played for you in that. We talk a lot about the importance of surrounding the 5 people around you and how you pick those closest 5, the impact that they have in your life. But the other thing I wanted to hit on too was, because we've talked about this on the podcast before, and I think it's really more for maybe younger listeners, but maybe even not younger listeners. But dude, the bottom line is don't burn bridges. Like if you're going to switch jobs or you're going to do something, like don't be the asshole. Don't go in there and throw your shit on the boss's desk and go, fuck you, I'm out, and leave, right? Give your 2 weeks notice, be respectful, thank them for the opportunity that you had, even if you hated it, right? Because you never know when that person's going to cross your path again. You never know when 5 years down the road, you want to shift jobs to a new place, and guess who's going to be your boss? Guess who the manager is? And you think you're going to get hired for that after you just threw all your shit on their desk 5 years ago and told them to fuck off, right? So you just like have some integrity in the process. Like don't burn bridges. It's not worth it, because you never know when people are going to cycle back through your life like that. So talk to that a little bit, Flash.
Well, you know, when it first started out, I was not a good airman. I just wasn't. You know, I was young, fairly immature, but I had a very directness and forwardness to me always. So you were always going to know what I thought, whether or not it was correct or incorrect. So I remember, you know, one of the first guys, one of my first flight chiefs, senior master sergeant, and he was able enough to take 5 minutes of his time and say, hey, you know what? Your view of the world is different than everybody else's, but it doesn't make it the right view of the world. Why don't you sit back and listen so you can actually see what's going on versus just telling everybody what, hey, man, you're just a little A1C.
Yeah.
It'll be okay.
Yeah, it's important to listen.
It is important to listen.
Especially when you're young or inexperienced.
Especially when you're young. Very, very little experience. And as that started going through, he was absolutely correct. And when I was able to get down to Shaw, I was able to listen more. Okay, we're going to take this Baysden kid over here. We're going to put him on demo. Is that something you'd like to do? Yeah, something I'd like to do. It'd be great. And it opened up a world of opportunities for me there because I had a great demo team commander, a dude named Glenn Leonard Lawson. He's around the 16 community, went to the Thunderbirds, that type deal. And, his safety pilot was Psycho Cineraki. And just, you started remembering people. And I'm like, okay, got it. And when I got to Aviano, one of the great people to this day, General Goldfein, he was Lieutenant Colonel Goldfein at that time. And I had that conversation with him. He was really a real personable dude. What I wanted to do, he's like, we're going to try to make that work for you. If that's what you want to do, we'll try to make it work. And General Goldfein ended up being Colonel Goldfein as my first OG when I got to Mountain Home as a first lieutenant. And you're like, holy cow. He made the triple nickel, used to be a E model squadron.
Yeah.
Right there in Phoenix at Luke. It moved out to Aviano. It used to be blue. When General Goldfein's dad had it, it was green. General Goldfein made it green. So I leave the triple nickel, go into the Strike Eagle, and I've got these little lieutenant bars that say once green, always green. That was given to me by the triple nickel. And it's just really, when you see that, and between the 16 and 15, those worlds interacted a lot at Mountain Home because you had the T-bolts that were there as a squadron at that time.
Yeah, they had the composite wing back then.
Composite wing. I went through IFF, and one of the instructors at IFF was a guy that flew at Aviano at the assignment previous to me going to OTS. So we shared our stories of Italy. We shared our stories of being in a squadron, people that we knew. It just created a really good network environment to say,
yep,
hey, don't burn these bridges like you talked about. And I don't really know too many people who say they came across bad people. They probably have bad experiences, but I think the people have been mostly good.
I got a kind of a unique example of how small the world really is sometimes. So when I was at Elmendorf in the 19th Fighter Squadron, I was a crew chief. And my pilot on my jet, so my jet came back from depot, looked brand new, man, brand new paint job. I was a brand new crew chief with a brand new second and a brand new lieutenant pilot on there. So years go by, I go to OTS, go through the whole thing, and I end up at IFF, and that pilot is a captain instructor at IFF. And we were in separate squadrons there at Moody, but we passed each other in the hallway and kind of stopped and kind of did one of those things to each other, and ended up working it out to where we got to go fly together one time. So that was kind of neat, right? All right. Well, fast forward all these years later, and I'm working where I am now for the F-35s. One of the guys that was there when I got hired was in that same squadron at Elmendorf, right? And I probably launched him out 100 times and just never knew it. And then just recently we hired a guy who, after that pilot, my pilot, after we both PCS'd, I went to OTS and he went to IFF. The next pilot on that jet, 5100, sits in the cubicle next to me right now.
Holy cow. That is a small world.
It is, man. It's just a small world out there. And that goes back. I brought that up, though, because I wanted to bring it up to Cass's point. It's like, you can be the best crew chief, pilot, engineer, secretary. It doesn't fucking matter. You can be the best at whatever it is. But if you're an asshole, people won't remember the good stuff.
No.
They'll remember that you were an asshole.
That's right.
Right. And how many times have I said, man, like the vetting process to get a job like what we have is oftentimes the manager sticks his nugget out the door and says, hey, does anybody know Flash? Yeah, Flash is an asshole. Cool. Not hiring Flash.
Yeah.
Because that's, I mean, your reputation precedes you a lot of times,
It does. It really does. However, rarely are you going to change that, right? So if people perceive you as an asshole, you might as well be the asshole. So that's the very few times you get a chance to be that asshole.
Hopefully somebody will do like they did in your case, and they'll give you some feedback, and you'll have a little humility, and you can kind of pump the brakes a little.
Yeah,
you do. If you value yourself and that person is genuine, they'll try to lead you in the correct direction. They will. And the Air Force does a great job at putting you where you need to be at the time where you are. TLC, timing, luck, and circumstance, right? So that TLC works out very well.
Yeah. Well, that luck, I think, often comes down to preparation. A big chunk of it is preparation. You know, if the timing for you wasn't right, or if you weren't prepared, if you didn't have your degree in place. And for me, it was even a little more special because I put in to be a maintenance officer. We just accidentally sent the package to a rated board instead of a non-rated board. Flash, you mentioned, you know, the kind of the wave in front of you was giving you the gouge on who to keep in touch with and what the process looked like, et cetera. Well, that wave in front of me, they were all going to space and missile. And I thought that was the direction I was going to go just a year prior. And I mean, fast forward a year and all of a sudden, man, we need flyers really bad. And just, I mean, again, just dumb luck and timing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember my selection process. The guy who has to put in your package was a civilian, an ESO. And I told him, hey, I want to apply to be a pilot. And he says, well, we don't usually do that. Okay, but I'm still going to apply to be a pilot. That's what I'm going to do. Well, you do know you only get one chance at a rated board. And after that one chance, you don't get the chance anymore. I'm applying to be a pilot. Well, we get everything together and I get all my recommendation letters and that all works out fine. Send it off. And there's a tech sergeant who's on the board at Maxwell who just happens to call back and say, hey, man, I need your 781s. And I'm like, I don't have 781s, man. I work on the flight line. I've got 0 flight time. I didn't do any general aviation flying. I'm in Europe. And he says, dude, you're not going to be a pilot. Recommendation, the board meets, change your selection to navigator, and you're going to be okay. I'm like, hey, man, I don't know if I want to do that. He says, I've got 100 slots, and I've got over 200 people that have over 100 hours. You're not going to be a pilot. And it just so happens.
Well, that was good that he was brutally honest with you.
Yeah, at least he was honest.
He was brutally honest. Yeah, he was honest. And that's one of those TLC deals, right? There are boards that go through where they take people who don't have any experience whatsoever.
Yeah.
But my board are like, we're going to take 100. And I've got over 200 here that have over 100 hours of flight experience. Yeah. So, you know, either way. You just got to, that was a luck deal.
Yeah.
Because he could have very well not said anything at all and could have got bypassed over that board and probably would have been a maintenance officer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a very similar story. Go ahead, Cass.
I was just going to say on the flip side of what we were talking about earlier, you know, because you guys were just talking about, you know, the good people that took care of you, and then Roscoe, you brought up don't be an asshole. So I had a guy that was like my flight commander at officer training school who was a complete douchebag and a total asshole the entire fucking time we were there. And I think
it's a prereq to have that.
And
job,
I get that some of it is, I get that some of that's required, right? For the general hazing that used to go on. I don't know if it still does, but definitely went on when I went through. And so fast forward, like, I don't know, 7 years later, and I'm the wing patch at Shaw, and this chuckle nuts just came through the B course and is in the squadron I fly with. Yeah.
Oops.
I thoroughly enjoy doing his MQT rides. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal.
Thoroughly
enjoy. You never know, man.
Yeah, that's when Asshole Cass we had his debriefs were just a touch longer than the other ones were. I'll tell you that.
Just a touch.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, dude, I mean, gosh, we could fill an entire episode talking about just this, right?
Yeah.
But I want to throw out the spoiler here. Flash, dude, congrats. You got what you wanted. You got commissioned. You got a flying spot. You're going to go fly Strike Eagles at Seymour Johnson. And everybody's going, oh, look at Flash. He's so lucky. And what they don't realize, man, is the real hard work just begun.
Yeah.
Like,
it did.
It did not get easier. If anything, it was a degree or two exponentially harder on this side. If you want to continue to be that person and lead from the front, because here's the thing, man, is like this is going to sound bad. Hopefully, I can explain it, but in the group of people that we surrounded ourselves with on the enlisted side, guys who were leaning forward and being ambitious like that, you might have had 2 or 3 in your shop, right? There's 2 or 3 crew chiefs that were always volunteering for things and always going out there to do the nasty jobs and always staying late and showing up early. And the rest of the guys were, they're just kind of coming in, doing their thing, going home. When you get to a fighter squadron, you find out that it's everybody is that lean forward kind of guy. And everything's a competition. It's like the cut from high school football to college football. You might have been the all-star running back on your high school football team. When you get to D1, guess what? Everybody was the all-star on their team. And that, I think, was a big difference for me, not having that natural or that what's the word I'm looking for, Cass? You weren't selectively picked out just because you showed up 5 minutes early. No, well, dude, everybody showed up 15 minutes early. Where the fuck were you? Is kind of what I found out the hard way.
I remember my first test in flight training, and I remember I had this perception where everybody just had fun in flight training because you got to see the green baggers up there. They seem like they're always happy. They're having a great time. Well, I go to flight training, take my first test. My wife asked me, "Hey, how'd you do?" I think I made a 94. So that sounds great. I said, "It's the second lowest grade in the class." 94 is the first test, second lowest grade in the class. And so I recognized really quick, I did not have a photographic memory. I could count on one hand the amount of people who did have a photographic memory in my class. And that really kickstarted for me to say, I got to do more. So what was done in the past has got to be more.
You got to work hard for it.
Yeah, You got to work hard.
Yeah, this shit don't come easy.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great point, though, Roscoe, because I think a lot of times, especially when we're younger, we set goals for ourselves, and we think when we get to that goal, like it's all going to fall into place, and that's just not fucking reality, right? Like the reality is it doesn't get easier. There's always going to be more work to do. There's always something else to learn. There's always ways to get better, right? It's going to be that continuous improvement process that we always talk about, right? And if you're not up for that, then like it's going to suck for you when you get there, because you're going to because like you're saying, you're going to recognize that all of a sudden, holy shit, now I'm competing against guys that are working just as hard as me, or maybe even harder, or maybe just have other skills that I haven't built yet.
Better, more talented.
Yeah. And maybe not even natural talent. Maybe, just, had the benefit of better schooling at some point or stuff like that. But you've said this before, Roscoe, too. What's the adage that you always say when it comes to like work ethic is better than, like having all the talent in the world? What's that little moniker that you
hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so to Flash's point, right? Like that's where
Tim Nolte.
Well, so that's where, but to Flash's point, that's where self-inspection can become so important, right? Because if you know where your strengths and your weaknesses lie, because you've taken stock of yourself, well then, dude, when you show up into situations like that, you know exactly where you need to put your effort, right? Because at the end of the day, the guys that typically succeed aren't necessarily the smartest guys in the room. They're the guys that have put in the most fucking work. They're the guys that put in the most effort, do what they need to do around the studying or, the chair flying or the reps or whatever it is to do well on the next sortie and those types of things, and aren't just in there smoking and joking and fucking around because they think they got it licked because they're God's gift to aviation or whatever, right? So, which you find out real fast that you're not. But so I wanted to bring that up because I think that's a great point to push out to the listeners.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've always tried to do is where I'm at, I want that honest feedback because I give honest feedback. So I expect honest feedback in return. When you're working for something like that and someone asks you what you want, you should tell them the truth.
Yeah.
I
you gotta be honest
with people I knew a lot of people who would maneuver in relation to who's asking the question, and do you want to work in this shop? Yeah, and knowing they did not want to work in that shop, they just thought that was the opportunity that was presented to them. And so, when people ask me, "What did you want to do?" I had known about weapons officers in the past in my prior life, and I had a really, really good weapons officer in my first duty assignment, and I'm like, "That's what I want to do. That's what I want to do." And I remember my flight commander, second flight commander, said, "Why do you want to do that?" And he was a weapons officer, and I told him, he's like, "That's the wrong reason. That's the wrong reason." He says, "It's nothing like that." Well, okay, because I told him I want to be a squadron commander. I want to lead men. He's like, "You go be a squadron commander. I'll go to weapons school, man. You don't have to do that." Yeah, but I want to go to weapons school. He says, one before the other. If you want to go to weapons school, we could try to make that work. It's just don't do it to be a squadron commander.
Yeah,
and he was absolutely correct.
Yeah,
he was absolutely correct.
Yeah, I think as Cass was talking a second ago, and then you were kind of alluding to something too that I was thinking about was, if you reach your goal, whatever that goal is, it doesn't matter really what the goal is. If you climb that mountain and you're standing on top of it, what happens if you stop working hard at that point? And our examples there, Flash, your example of getting commissioned and getting into a fighter cockpit, that's a great example. You worked your ass off, you got there, woohoo! All right, great. You're wearing speed jeans and a helmet and breathing oxygen and everything's great, right? But what happens if you stop working hard at that point? Somebody's going to knock you off that pedestal, right? It's
Sure.
King of the Hill. Life is just a big game of King of the Hill in a lot of ways. And if you stopped working hard the day that you showed up to the fighter squadron, you're going to get left in the dust, bro, and you're not going to be in that fighter squadron very long. So the onus is on us as individuals to, all right, cool, check that container, met the goal, what's next?
Yeah.
And keep moving.
Yep.
Yeah. It does take the vision you got to have in order to what that next event's going to be, what that next goal's going to be.
Yeah.
Because I often find myself, and one of the things that I do try to work on, it's funny that you mentioned that, because is the vision, what is next? So here you are, middle 100s, right? What's going to be next?
Yeah.
And so is what I have right now good? What I have right now is great. I'll be honest. When I was, retiring from the Air Force, if I could do what I'm doing right now, would be the dream. And here I am. I'm doing the dream. I'm living my dream right now. This is a phenomenal deal where I'm at in life, and it's phenomenal. But you do have to say what is going to be next.
Well, I think your point when you were talking about going to weapons school, one of the things that is laid out for us pretty well, I think, especially in the fighter community, is there's a path, right? And I say all the time, man, there's no such thing as the way, but there is a path. And there's, the path is you got to go to undergraduate flight training, and then you have to go to IFF, and then you have to go to a B course of some sort. And then you'll probably go through some kind of flight lead upgrade or an instructor upgrade. And then eventually you go to weapons school or whatever it is, mission commander upgrade, whatever that path is. But there's stepping stones to get you to that end game of squadron command or whatever that end result goal is. Not every career, though, I don't know, is like that. If you're a civilian and you're working for a company, is there a path for you? Or do you need to be proactive and create that path and have that vision and maybe start asking some of those questions to mentors and find out what else is there out there? If you're just a project manager for company X and you don't know that there's a ladder you can climb, you got to take that initiative and start asking questions, man.
Sure. And that comes with your peer group. Who's going to give you that advice, or are you going to be able to read that room when you walk in there and know where you stand in the room, and who's going to be your lasso that you're going to latch onto to take you out of that position to take you somewhere else? Because nobody does it on their own, regardless of what people want to believe.
It's a fucking team sport, brother.
No, they don't.
Life is a team sport.
Well, and so I want to make one comment, and then I want to share a quick story just related to this topic because I think it's really pertinent. But the comment I want to make is, like Flash, you talked about, when you got to the squadron, like you were very honest about where you wanted to go and what you wanted to do. And I think that that's important, man. But I would wonder, and I'll let you answer this question because I'm curious. I think that comes with a certain amount of maturity. I think there's a certain amount of maturity that you have to have in comfort in knowing who you are and what you're capable of to be able to sit down as the new guy in a squadron and go, hey, dude, this is what I want to do. So help me get there. Right. I think because like, you're talking about, there's a lot of guys, especially when they're younger or brand new airmen, who are afraid to even open their mouth because they just got their nuts kicked in for, 8 weeks at boot camp or whatever. And they don't want to talk to anybody that's, got one strap above them. So first of all, do you think that's true? Do you think if you were Flash coming into the squadron straight out of finishing your extremely awesome golf career at Mount Olive or wherever the fuck it was, North Carolina, and went to OTS and then showed up at a squadron, would you have been like, I'm going to weapons school? Or do you think that would have been, you'd have been a little more, or has that just always been kind of your nature and personality?
If I knew, or if I found out, having not done the path previous to what a weapons officer was,
then you would have known.
Been my nature, personality. I would have done that. But it's funny that you mentioned that, because when people ask you, like, hey, dude, you want to be a weapons officer? Yeah. You'll never do that.
Yeah.
Man, I've heard this story before. I've started this show. Sit back. Let's see how this ends, because it's gonna be a wild ride.
Yeah.
That maturity piece of it, though, is not to be glossed over, Cass. And
no, I don't think
in both of our cases, we had done nearly half of a career somewhere else already. We had grown through the ranks over there, and we had been supervisors, and we had been on the front lines. We had been on deployments.
Yeah, you guys knew the Air Force.
We had experience that our bros coming right out of the academy or ROTC just didn't have.
Yep.
So, and I mean, never mind the fact that I was a 29-year-old grown-ass man when I showed up to Seymour Johnson. I got 3 kids and a wife at home, bro. And you just came out of a frat party.
Yeah.
I've got life experience here. So we carried ourselves maybe a little bit of a different way.
Sure.
And I tell you something else that was hard. I don't want to get too far away because I want you to tell your story. But one of the other things that I found, it wasn't hard, it was weird, is when we showed up to a squadron, Katie and I, we were butter bar lieutenants, but all of our age group wise, like with families and wives and this, that, and the other, career longevity, those guys are all majors and lieutenant colonels, so I'm having to go hang out with like senior captains and majors on the weekends when my B course bros are going out partying with lieutenants. And it was a little bit of a weird dynamic, man. I'm a B course kid going to hang out with the cadre because our kids are the same age. They play on the same baseball team.
Yeah. Well, I think the point that I wanted to make was, especially if you're younger, you're brand new, maybe in a position or with a company, I think doing what Flash did and having some honesty, even if it may be like, it may seem crazy to some people what you want to do. I think at least giving your boss or the folks around you that have some influence, some indications of, here's the bottom line, dude, is nobody's going to advocate for you until they know you, right? And so if you show up in some place new and nobody knows who the fuck you are because you haven't you haven't been in the game long enough to build a reputation for yourself, nobody's going to do anything for you except you. And you've got to have the courage to ask the questions, right? And so here's my example. So David, my oldest son, just left for the Army. He just showed up at Fort Campbell, and he in-processed. And he's got some goals. He's got some specific goals that he wants to achieve in the next couple of years with SF and a few other things. And so he gets there and, he goes through kind of in processing for the first week or so. Doesn't really know what unit he's going to yet. Find out he's going to 3rd Battalion. Well, 2nd Battalion's spinning up to go on a deployment in about 5 months. And he's like, well, shoot, dude, if I can get into 2nd, I would love to do that because I'd love to get down range. They're going to do a bunch of training. I'll pick up a bunch of good skill sets. This will help me with my packages for other things down the road, right? So what does he do? He reaches out to me. He reaches out to a few guys that have been really great mentors for him that are former Army guys. And he goes, how do I attack this? And they go, well, you got to go talk to the Chief Master Sergeant. David doesn't even have his uniforms yet. So he goes, okay, they tell him, don't go talk to 3rd Battalion Chief, go talk to 2nd Battalion Chief, because he's the one that can pull the strings to get you in. 3rd Battalion doesn't even know.
Hell yeah, more people.
3rd Battalion doesn't even know who the fuck you are yet, right? So David goes in there and he goes to the chief's office in the staff building, the headquarters staff, battalion staff building. And he walked in and it was like fucking out of the movies. The record screeches. Everybody turns around. It's all these senior enlisted and officers.
If we dance with Joe Dates?
Staring at him. Yeah, right? Staring at him. And he goes, I felt like I was a fucking unicorn, And they're all just staring at him. And he's a private first class right now. And
please tell me he was wearing like jean shorts and a Kobe Bryant jersey or something like that,
right? And like some E7 comes up and he's like, "What do you need? What are you doing here?" He's like, "I'd like to talk to the chief master sergeant. I'd like to come to 2nd Battalion." And the guy just looks at him. He's like, "Dude, where's your uniform?" He goes, "I don't have them yet." and
some
anyway,
kid that just wandered into the base.
Long story short. He goes, well, let me go talk to the chief. They give him a bunch of good ribbon. I got to read this one text because it's just perfect. I cried when I read this, but he said one of the staff guys said my balls outweigh my rate tremendously. But the guy goes back and asks the chief if he's got time. So David goes back there and he goes, hey, chief, I'm former Marine, did some time as an EMT. I hear you guys are getting ready to spin up for deployment. I just showed up. I'm in processing. Don't have my uniforms yet, but I'd really like to come to 2nd Battalion instead of 3rd because you guys are getting ready to deploy. And I'd really like to go down range, have the opportunity to learn some skills, get myself dirty in Army and figure it all out. And he's like, okay, well, what's your background? What kind of skills do you have? What can you bring to the fight? So David explains all the things that he's done in the Marine Corps, EMT stuff and everything. And the chief just looks at him. He goes, you know what? He goes, we will always take motivated people who want to be here. And he goes, I can't promise you anything.
Hell yeah.
But let me make some phone calls and I'll get back to you. 2.5 hours later, man, he gets a call. He's going to 2nd Battalion. So,
fuck yeah, dude.
Just fucking off the street, right? Nobody. But my point in saying that is I think it's such a great story because, dude, if you're not willing to step out, because like David said, yeah, did I look like an asshole walking in there? Absolutely. Were people giving me the hairy eyeball? Yes, they were. But you know what? If they would have turned him away and said no, what the fuck changed? Nothing.
Well, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right?
Exactly, right? But it's a complete missed opportunity if you don't have the courage to go out there and step outside of your comfort zone, even though you look like a fucking clown at the time.
Well,
and ask.
But we talked about opportunity and luck. So much of opportunity and luck is timing, right? And his timing was perfect. And if he'd have waited 2 more days, that timing wouldn't have been there.
That's right. So
once he signs into 3rd Brigade, he's effed in the A.
Well, that's good.
But that door was cracked open just a little bit. Good on him for kicking that fucker open and running through it, man.
That opportunity, or at least try, right?
Awesome.
And so I was super proud of him for that. And the other thing too is I guarantee you that there's some dude in there that saw that. Or the chief that saw that, and they're going to be watching him. He's made an impression already, right?
Well,
maybe good, maybe bad, but
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was going to tack on to that is I bet you when he left the room, the remaining senior NCOs looked at each other and went, "That's a fucking leader right there."
That's right.
That's going to be one of our sergeants. Within a year, he's going to be leading troops.
That's right. I mean, so anyways, my point in saying all that is to Flash's point earlier. Good on you, bro, because that's what you have to do. You have to make known where you want to go, because you're not going to get, first of all, you're not going to get the mentorship potentially. Or in the case of dude, if you want to go to weapons school, you don't have to self-identify right away when you first show up to your first, but you've got to self-identify at some point, because if guys don't know that, you're not going to get the feedback you need. You're not going to get the opportunities to fly with patches that you need to really be evaluated to know if you have the skill set to do it or not. And, you can be one of those.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Right. And then you're one of those fairies running around going, and I don't mean fairy in a homosexual way. I just mean you do. You're one of those. No, but you're one of those people that's running around thinking you're going places, you're going to do things, and because nobody knows, nobody's ever told you that you're actually relatively average in the jet and you have no fucking chance of ever making it to weapons school unless you clean up X, Y, and Z. Right. So.
Absolutely.
Right. So those things are important. It's important to let people know, because then you get that feedback of, hey, dude, you have the skill set to get there, but you've got to clean up X, Y, and Z. Right. And now you know what you can focus on. You know what to go after. You know what to do to get yourself where you need to be to get to where you want to go. It's all part of that process.
Yeah.
And you have to do it.
You do. And then you got to put the work in.
It's funny. You mentioned gutter at the beginning of the whole deal, right? And so I get to the Eagles, and I was lucky enough. I was a first assignment instructor in the op squadron. I wasn't good. There's no way, but I did the path, right? You mentioned, Roscoe, the path.
Yeah,
There's a path, right? So I did the path, do the upgrade. And at that time, you had to do that path just to go to the FTU.
Yep.
And, BK is the squadron commander. He says, hey, Flash, I would love to take you down range. The truth is, AFPC, they need people in the FTU. You're going to the FTU, man, and you're going to love it. And, of course, I did not want to go. I did not think it was going to be my path. So I get to the FTU, and the weapons officer there, Gutter, it's like, dude, you're not good. You're not good.
He was a direct individual, was he not?
Meet me here on Saturday. My bro Popeye and I are going to come in, and we're going to go through, and we're going to take you through the stuff that you don't know. And it was really stuff that I should have known, but we created a starting point, and we work from there. So the next look, no, I'm not Flash. The next look, Flash is an alternate. The following look, Flash is number one. Sentiment. It's just, that's how the stuff works out. But I could have very easily said, oh, no, man, I'm the bee's knees. I know exactly, versus trying to hone that skill. And regardless of anything that you do, it's a skill. It's a skill.
Well, what about that first time that you were passed over? You could have wadded up in the fetal position and cried about it, or get your package ready for the next round. You got 6 months.
Yeah. I knew I was not good. I had the direct feedback, right?
Yeah.
Hey, man, you carry a lot of mass, but we're going to chisel this down to what we want. And it's going to be okay.
Yeah, well, I think
that's good. I think you need those people in your life. Go ahead, Cass.
Well, I was going to say, I think what's important that too. I mean, one, I think we were lucky in the sense that you got very direct feedback every day in a fighter squadron, and I don't think most people get that, day in, day out from their bosses or peer group or whatever else, right? It's just a different environment in that sense. But like you were saying, Flash, like you had when you did get the feedback, you had an option. You had a choice to make. You going to take it?
You did.
Or you're going to go, fuck him. I'm the bee's knees.
Yeah.
I know my shit.
Yeah.
I don't care what he thinks. No, dude, take the feedback. If it's valid feedback, take the feedback, right? Take the feedback and figure out what you got to do to get better. That's what feedback's for. So
that is exactly what it's for. And you mentioned earlier, sorry.
No, go ahead.
About the civilian sector side, they probably don't get that feedback all the time, but maybe their networking skills make up for it. And the end result is the payoff. But
or maybe you need to seek it. If you're not,
sometimes you have to look for it.
You got to go out and get it. You know what I mean? You got to find somebody, a trusted agent that you can ask those questions of and find out what you need to work on.
Yeah. I've got a project that I'm working on right now where I'm having to actively seek for feedback on it. And I have to reach out to people that I don't know, and I have to make contact and build a relationship and then send them the thing. And, hopefully they're honest with it. And it's uncomfortable, but I think after you do it, the more you do it, the more comfortable it becomes. It's like we talk about sometimes with exercise, the more times you do pull-ups eventually don't suck as bad, and I think seeking for feedback. But, Flash, one thing that when you were telling that story, man, of how that kind of all unfolded, you walk in with your big brass balls and you go, dude, I want to be a weapons officer. And I'm like, great, dude, let's pass the first test of the B course first, But at the same time, people might joke about it. People might laugh at you a little bit and tease you some, but the onus is on you to back that shit up. You have to come in there and same for David, right? Going into the Army commander or command sergeant major's office. He goes in there with his big balls and says, dude, I want to come work for you guys because I got plans for my life. And they laugh at him, they joke on him, and they say, all right, dude, we're going to give you a shot.
Yeah.
Well, if he doesn't come with it, if he doesn't fucking bring it,
that's right.
Then
he's got work to do.
Then they're going to laugh him off stage,
that's
man.
Right.
And the same was the same in a fighter squadron. You walk in and you go, hey man, I'm going to be your next commander here in about 10 years. And people laugh at you. But if you come in there and you back that shit up, that that comes down to you and your individual level effort. And
that's right.
You have to take that feedback, and you have to work the Saturdays and the different things that it takes to get to that mountaintop again.
Yeah, well, don't get it wrong though, because I didn't walk around saying I want to be a weapons officer. When people asked me, I told them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I knew, and I think some of the people that I flew with, some of the smartest people ever. You know, I can still name off names, just truly intelligent individuals, and they did great in the Air Force, as they should have. And to this day, you know, you are smarter. There is no doubt. And
yeah,
but we flew together, we deployed together, we had a great time.
Bro, that cadre that was in the Eagles between 06 and 08, there were some special people there, for sure.
Pedro Bayshore is one of those photographic memory dudes.
Yeah,
and just absolutely unreal.
Yeah,
Gaucho Charlton is absolutely phenomenally smart, really talented at flying, and just make everything look easy.
There was a bunch of them, man. Drifter, Gutter, Popeye. Yeah. I mean, there's just so many of them. The list goes on, and you know, you look at it and you're like, man, what made those guys special? And I think, you know, we were talking about it in the pregame. We were talking about the ingredients to it, and those guys had it, man. It was that mix of they were brilliant minded people to begin with. Yeah. You know, just naturally smart people. They had the gift of communication. They worked hard at their craft. They worked really hard at their craft. And that cannot go overlooked. Like, you can be the most talented, gifted speaker on stage, but if you don't work hard at your craft, somebody's going to end up catching you and beating you in the end.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, I think we can all look back on our career and go, and you pick out those 5 people or so that really stood out across the years. And those are the people who had those traits, man, that they worked really hard at their craft. They were humble. They took the feedback. Yeah. They tried new things. Oh, well, shit, that didn't work. Let me try something else, you know?
One of the greatest things I remember about my time and doing what I did was, you know, what I did was nice, but what I was able to help somebody else do based on that recognition and pushing them forward. And you mentioned it in a roundabout way, Roscoe, that when you recognize the goodness in somebody else and you want to help them and then they do succeed, regardless if you get the accolade for that or not, you feel great about it.
There's no better feeling in the world, bro.
That's right.
There's no better feeling.
Yeah. No, I've said it a million times. There's no better feeling than knowing that you made a difference in somebody's life.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And I just wanted to piggyback on something that you said, Roscoe, when we were talking about David's situation, which is, you know, now the onus is on him, right? But dude,
yeah,
isn't that the position that all of us would rather be in, right?
I'd
rather be in the position where, you know, it's on me, right? It's up to me now to put in the effort, to put in the work, to prove my value.
Kobe wanted the ball at the end of every game.
That's right.
I'm just saying, right? So, champions want the ball.
But my point in saying that is you don't get there if you just allow other people's misperceptions, or, you know, if you're trying to fly under the radar or whatever, you're not going to get the opportunity to be in that position. You get into that position by doing those things, by getting outside of your comfort zone, by making yourself known, by asking the questions, by telling people where you'd like to get to, so that they can help put things in your path that may allow you to get there, depending on the kind of work and effort you put in.
Yeah, dude. And there's something hidden in there, what you're talking about, and it's filtering out the noise, right? Because there's going to be naysayers. There's going to be people who laugh at you. There's going to be people who finger point, and you have to learn, and it's a skill that you have to develop, right? You can't take every single bit of feedback that you get, because some of it fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Okay. But oftentimes, especially from the people who care and legitimately give a shit, that feedback is what's going to make you better. The trick is, the skill part of it is, how do you separate that, right? How do you learn to not listen to the sneers and jeers and listen to the cheers and the people who are actively trying to build you up? Because sometimes it sounds the same.
Yeah.
Sometimes it sounds very close. And, you know, and I think we've all been guilty of probably falling for the wrong thing, or maybe listening to somebody that in hindsight probably wasn't the best advice or something like that.
Yeah. Not all of it's good advice. But it was funny. He came back to his barracks because he's in this, this basically like a holding platoon as these guys get their stuff in processing figured out before they get shipped off to the different battalions. And he's there with a guy that was in the guard and he's 32 years old. He's been there for, he knows big army. And David came back and told him what he did. And the guy was like, "You did what?
You did what?"
So yeah, but that right.
You know what we're going to get him. You know what we're going to get him for Christmas is we're going to get him a shirt that has B1 change one on the front and on the back it says 0 fucks given.
Yeah, no doubt, right?
It took a lot of gumption to get in there like that. Definitely did.
Or some,
but hey,
so some naivety.
Hey, he won, right?
Yeah, he won hard, man.
Like he won.
Well, everybody on this podcast has been a lieutenant knows if you're going to make those mistakes, make them.
Yeah, that's right. You get a little grace.
Well, in his case, he didn't even have a freaking uniform, man.
If you're going to make those mistakes, make them early.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So all right, so Flash, man, let's continue the ride. This is fun. So fucking Strike Eagles Weapons School, got your ass kicked for a little bit. And then you got a few years and you're looking towards the end of your career, right? And you look back you start to look back, man, because I know I've been there, right? And you look back and you're like, wow, man, you're starting to do some reflecting and you're remembering those good days in the dorms at Shepherd Air Force Base and when you were in tech school. And then, hell, that's where Katie and I met. We met at Shepherd in tech school, and you're starting to reflect on all these memories that you had over this career that's just been a fucking wild ride, man, when you look back on it, and never a dull moment, always doing something new and different. What do you think was your favorite part, or what's that one memory that keeps jumping out to you?
Oh, man. Well, I don't know if there's a memory that keeps jumping out to me. I know my favorite time in the Air Force was when I was the weapons officer of Bull Tigers. There's no doubt. I mean, that's to be a weapons officer in your first fighter squadron to come back in that day and land. That is the favorite time. And the upgrades, the dudes you get to influence and see all those things. And I got people that come back through. Some are out there in Phoenix with you guys. I remember you, and here's what I like and what I don't like. I like the amount I was able to grow. I don't like how good I thought I was when I really wasn't. You get what I'm saying?
No, that's powerful, dude.
I thought I was a pretty good flyer, pretty good wizzo. I mean, I had everything, all the accolades to back it up, right? I had all the awards, I had all the weapons school, I had all that. But as I grew, I learned, man, I really was never that good. I'm able to be a lot better now. And that maturity level you spoke about before, Cass, is you can be put in that false sense of, I'm good, this is good, this is, when you leave weapons school, you're the best you'll ever be, you're the top of the tier, it's how sharp do you want to stay? That really is true because there's another class coming after you who's going to be just as sharp, if not sharper. How you handle that and how you go through that is going to probably shape the rest of your career. But I was lucky. I had all the right mentors, the honest feedback. And I still believe if I give the honest feedback, I should get honest feedback. And I did. But that time in the Bull Tigers when you were there, that's the best time. Bar none. That's the best time. As far as transition to retirement, the Air Force went through a time called sequestration. I'm sure we all remember that.
Oh yeah.
That was the lowest point. I saw decisions being made that, whether I agree with them or not, they weren't my decisions. It was just really unfortunate that we had to go that route.
Yeah.
So it turned out to be the right time.
During that time, man, we've spent a lot of time on this show talking about how we influence others and how we make a difference in other people's lives and whatnot. But I was a flight commander at the 101st down at the 19th ASOS. Yeah. And during that sequestration time, we had to rack and stack every single airman in our squadron. And they drew a line. And if you were below that line, guess what? You weren't in the Air Force tomorrow. And
wow.
and I had a fast burning master sergeant that was my NCOIC, and he was given to me because of my prior enlisted experience. My squadron commander said, I think that you can really help this guy. He's a young dude. He's a fast burner. He needs to grow up a little bit. He needs some mentorship. So they gave him to me. And 6 months later, I had him sent home from a deployment, and I wrote him a 2 EPR.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he had 2 LORs and a couple of LOCs and some really scathing midterm feedback, and he wasn't a great senior NCO. Unfortunately, we were downrange in a combat scenario, and that's the way it shook out. So there is another side to that coin of making a difference in somebody's life, and it wasn't all positive in my experience. I have a couple of experiences out there that I still think about him, man. I still think about that master sergeant and how that affected him for the rest of his career, because he'd only been in like 10 years, and he still had a long way to go and probably never got promoted again. And that affects him and his family and his wife and kids, and you know, his opportunities to PCS, to cool deals, and all kinds of stuff, man. And that's a little bit of the darker side of leadership sometimes that we don't talk about too much.
Yeah, it happens. If you're going to be put there, you got to make those decisions.
Yeah.
I remember we had one of our first dude goes to a 2-flug ride, doesn't do well the 2-flug ride, doesn't do well his 2-flug check. You have that hard conversation. You know, what are we going to do with him? You know, he goes to fly, you know, we'll say the 12, the -12.
MC-12.
MC-12. Goes fly
Yeah.
the MC-12. Becomes a damn DO in the MC-12. That's the path, right? You know, that wasn't the path that he probably wanted to be successful in the Air Force.
I think I know who you're talking about. We'll save that for afterwards, but I think I remember that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just those decisions have to be made, and that was for the betterment of for everybody, right? You know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a burden of leadership to a certain extent, you know.
Yeah.
But
that's very good.
Yeah, but to your point, Flash, because I think what's valuable to take out of those stories, though, in this particular, in the one that you shared, Flash, and then I'll share one that's similar, is because guess what? People, if you're listening to this podcast, this could happen to you, right? You could get hey man, you're not cut out for this. We need to put you in a different direction. And that's hard to take, right? That's difficult to hear when you've got an idea in your mind about who you are and what you're about and where you want to be. But I'm here to tell you, man, if you keep a good attitude and you stay professional and you work your ass off in the direction that they send you, good things can happen. Because I had a kid in the B course when I was the patch and the spikes, and I flew all of his TR stuff with him. He was struggling out the gate, right? Just couldn't keep up with the jet. It was just too fast for him. Get him through TR. He has the best check ride in the class. We start BFM. He's struggling with the G's. He's having all kinds of issues. Long story short, not very long in the BFM phase, we have the sit down and we go, hey, look, dude, how are you feeling? Where are you at in this? Because you're struggling, right? And you've been struggling from day one. We end up removing him from the course. He goes to the B1. Last time I saw, he's an 06. Did awesome work in the B1. He just needed a crew aircraft. He needed a crew aircraft to grow up in, right? To get, because he was one of those cats that just needed a little bit more time to build that SA bubble, you know, and to get proficient and good at something. And the single seat piece of it just wasn't going to work out for him. So goes to the B1, has a phenomenal career, right?
Homeboy needed a Wizzo.
Right. Yeah. Homeboy needed a Wizzo. That's right. But my point
hey, Flash,
is, right? You can get that feedback sometimes too. That isn't the feedback maybe that you want to hear, but if you run with it and you make the changes and you adapt and pivot and apply the effort and keep a good attitude, like Roscoe always says, man, good things can still happen. Like you may achieve.
Hey, Flash, watch this. Watch this. I'm going to give Cass a chubby, and he's going to knock over his microphone because I'm going to quote Pete Carroll. And Pete Carroll said, "Bloom where you're planted," and that's exactly what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes where you think you should be is not where you ought to be. And I mean, I've got some experiences with that too. Like I thought that I was supposed to go down a certain path, and that path didn't work out for me for a number of different reasons. And I got offered some other opportunities and weighed those decisions, ended up taking some of them, and ended up blooming where I was planted.
Yeah.
So
no doubt.
when you go into a situation like that, and certainly we can all relate with like a PCS or some assignment or something like that, some kind of deployment. If you go into it with a negative attitude, well, it's going to be a negative experience. And that's kind of where I went to Fort Campbell with. I went to Fort Campbell with a negative attitude because I thought that I needed to go to Seymour Johnson and be an instructor. And I was told no. And it sucked. Right. But when I got to Fort Campbell, I remember sitting down with Katie and having a talk around the dinner table about it. I've got to change my attitude about this, or else this is going to be the most miserable 3 years of my life. And consciously went into work the next day with a smile on my face, and ended up being one of my best assignments. I had the most fun there, getting to run around the woods and shoot guns and drive cool shit and blow stuff up. I mean, had a blast, man. Bloomed where I was planted.
Yeah.
The Air Force has it right. The Air Force has it right when they say from day one, you're an officer first, right? They say it, they ingrain it. It is true. So when you're able to go to do your assignment at Fort Campbell, you're a leader first, whether you were a leader in the Strike Eagle, whether you're a leader at Fort Campbell or in OTS or wherever it is you're put in that position to lead, you succeed to lead. And that's what made it great for you, brother.
Yeah, but being told no sucks.
It does.
When you think that you've got this path illuminated for you, and there was a lot of people that had parted things to lay that path out, and then you're told no, that kind of sucks.
It does.
I walked on water, ate breakfast with Jesus, was going to go ops to ops. That was the deal. I didn't do it.
Didn't work out.
It was everything I needed. It was everything I needed.
Yeah, sometimes it's a blessing in disguise. My point, though, is that just recognize, like we talk about on the podcast, there's opportunity in failure too, right? There's opportunity in setbacks, right? You've got to keep your eyes open for the fact that there may be an opportunity for you to step into something else here that can be really valuable for you and help set you up for whatever's next.
Yeah.
I've learned that very exact thing. Sometimes that delay is so you can grow into that opportunity that does not exist right now.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yep. There's some other lesson out there for you to learn first.
Well, speaking of opportunities,
and hopefully you learn it, because if you don't, then guess what happens? It's things tend to repeat themselves until you do, as we like to say on the podcast as well.
Life will continue to give you the opportunity to learn a lesson until you actually learn that lesson.
That's right.
Yep.
You'll keep getting kicked in the trunk until you figure it out.
I'm dealing with that with one of my kids right now. He's being a hard learner about some things, but he'll get it eventually. It may take until he's 40, but he'll learn it.
Oh man, that's so good.
Flash. So
yes,
just keeping the same themes going of doors opening and continuing to network and ask questions. Tell us more about this Bandit Flight Team. What is it? Where did it come from? How the fuck did you get on it? And what do you guys do?
So our motto is flying for the flag. So we have a bunch of dedicated individuals who go out there, and we do flyovers for the national anthem. We do flyovers for veterans. We've done funerals, unfortunately, but it's all for the flag. So these are people who, some of them were in the military, some of them were not in the military. They just love America, and it's both sides, blue and red. It does not matter. The common core there is we're Americans, and we do it. We've got a first generation Afghani who works our ground dude, and he loves it. He loves it. You know what I mean? It's phenomenal. So when I got out of the Air Force, I got back into general aviation. And when I got back into general aviation, Tracy and I, we got a 182. We flew around. And of course, everybody who's ever had an airplane knows 99% of the flying you're going to fly by yourself. So I went through and weighed the options. And a guy I work with, Spock, he has an RV-8, and he's on this team doing formation flying. I go flying with him one day, and it scratches the itch, right? I'm like, this is the flying that I remember. And oddly enough, we didn't talk about it a whole lot, but when you're in the Air Force, the first portion you're flying is not that fun. It's fun that you're up there, but it's a lot of learning. It's 14, 16-hour days, however long you got to learn that skill. And then you're being evaluated every single time, right?
Yep.
When are you being evaluated? Every flight you're being evaluated. So this was a good, fun flying time again. We sold the 182, and there was a young flyer in the Chiefs who was separating out, going to medical school, and he had an RV-8. Spock said, I know this guy. I'm like, I don't know him because I was working down at Boeing at the time, coming back up to Seymour transitioning. He says, I'll give him a call, see if he's going to sell it. So Spock gives me his number, gave him a call. He says, dude, I just listed it today to sell. It's 900 Papa Papa. If you want it, you're a fellow Strike Eagle bro. You got it. It's yours. And I bought it. And
Hell
for that
yeah.
portion there, I went from Flash the Wizzo to Flash the Pilot. And then you pledge to this formation flying team that we do out there, the Bandits. You get on as a wingman, work yourself up, flight lead. You know, now you're out there. You're Red Star qualified. You go to Red Star events, do the formation flying. We got a guy that comes down, gets our check rides annually. And it is a lot of fun. We're busy. We probably do 55 events a year.
Holy crap.
Events a year is pretty tough. Yeah. It's going through. We do all the NC State football flyovers for the national anthem, NASCAR flyovers, Richmond, Martinsville, Bristol a couple times. We've done out there in Charlotte, Panthers. We've done those flyovers. Whenever we have, it's a whole team, it's an organization we got from the top down. It was started from a couple guys out in Raleigh, Exec, south of Raleigh, and just started building. And currently we have 9 pilots, 9 airplanes, about 20 personnel, including ground and all other infrastructure inside there. And they're awesome people.
That's really cool, awesome. Bro.
So you're up there, 4 ship, 5 ship, 6 ship, doing your mini Thunderbird thing. And, you know, we Thunderbirds come back through. You know, we've had Thunderbirds come back through the B course, and you never tell them, hey, this is what I do. It's really, it's not nearly as fast. It's slower, not nearly as close. It's good. It's good.
That's cool.
But that flying is fun again. And what's really good is you get to take a lot of the lessons that you grew up with and the disciplines. We have briefs. We have debriefs. Nothing like in the Air Force as far as seriousness, but, you know, you could get lessons learned.
Sure.
And you can instruct. It's good.
That's cool.
That's so fun, awesome. Man. Well,
it is awesome.
Not only is it awesome and fun, but I can just see it on your face, man. You're like a kid again. You know, it's brought back that youthful passion joy. That, you know, some of us lose that over time. You know, you just the hustle bustle of life, and it gets busy sometimes, and sometimes it's good to just slow down and, man, smell the flowers, dude. And I have these pinch me moments when I walk into work where I'm at, you know, getting to still do what we all did on active duty, but I just wear khakis to work now. And I still, sometimes I walk into that building, I'm like, man, I'm not even supposed to be here. This is fucking awesome. You know, I'm the only Wizzo within about 300 miles of this place. I'm at the home of the single seat fighter pilot, and it's good, man. Life is good.
Throwing the bird.
It's great. It's great.
Well, they don't know.
Aviation, though. Yeah, good. General aviation is great. It really is good. And Tracy manages a flight school. So she's able to share that passion with me now and speak that language.
Oh, that's cool.
Understand what's going on with the weather and all those different. It's nice.
That's cool.
It's a change in our relationship as well.
Right, you guys are like that new Geico commercial where you're looking out and going, are those cumulonimbus clouds?
She's not that far into it, but she definitely understands the schedule. She definitely understands the weather.
Yeah,
it's nice. And
awesome.
Having that aircraft allows you to change the weather, right? So we can get in the airplane, shoot down to Charleston, shoot up to Virginia, and do things together.
Heck yeah, man.
That's cool, man.
It's nice.
Awesome.
That part has really, if you want to say, when you get someplace that you're really happy, I'm in the happy place right now. I'm in the happy place.
That's good, brother. I'm happy for you.
What's next, man?
I think, that's, you know, having this podcast, you guys have reminded me, what do you do next, right? How do you keep going, and what do you do next? I think the next opportunity is going to come about when there's a fundamental shift that's going to go on in the Strike Eagle community, where it just becomes the Eagle community. And my goal is to stay a part of that community. That's really my goal. Sometimes it's okay not to be in charge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
It's okay not to be in charge.
Yep.
But just be part of that team to keep that pushing forward. If I want a goal, my next goal is just to stay a part of that community.
That's cool, man. I'm sure you'll have no problem doing that.
Yeah, I'm sure you won't.
I certainly hope not. It's awesome. It really is good. And it's dynamic right now. So we've all been those times where the future is uncertain. So
yeah, the Air Force is changing, man. There's a lot of big muscle movements going on right now.
Yeah, the Air Force is changing. The people are still good, though. The people are still good.
Yeah.
The young people that come in, they're still good. They're different than what I remember. They're different than what I was back when I was that age. But I'm sure I was different. Guys like Dipper. I'm sure I was different than anybody else as well.
It's a generational thing too. We were laughing the other day about how this generation that's coming through right now, they don't understand our old movie quotes that we throw out in briefs and debriefs, because they get all their stuff from YouTube and SpongeBob or wherever the fuck they get it, and they don't understand Talladega Nights and Anchorman anymore. So for us, but that's good for us though, because it presents a little bit of a challenge. It's the onus is on us as leaders and mentors to stay up on some of that kind of stuff so that we can relate to them, so that they'll actually listen to us when we tell our old guy stories.
Yeah.
And not, like when I went through the B Corps, Gator was down there and he had one foot in the grave and the other slipping in. And it was hard to listen to him. He had never flown the jet before. The guy was old as dirt. And I mean, he couldn't hardly even walk into the sim building, So I think as long as we're able to relate to the next generations, I think we owe it to them to at least give them that effort to try.
Gator had one of those exceptional recall abilities. You know that? He had one of those exceptional recall abilities. I saw that guy in Jersey Mike's, and I probably haven't seen Gator in 12 years. And I walk up to him, and I made a habit a long time ago, not because of trying to be overbearing or over forward. I don't like forgetting people's names, and people always makes me feel bad when they forget your names. And I walk up to him, I'm like, Gator, Flash Baysden, how you doing? He says, yeah, you're from Richlands. You came through it this year. I'm like, holy cow, how do you remember that? That's phenomenal. He has one of those exceptional recall abilities he had back at the time, and he did the medallions here for a long time. Yeah. He was very involved and very entrenched in what went on around the community. Awesome, dude.
That's cool.
Wow. That's cool, man. Cash, you got anything else, bud?
I don't, brother. It was awesome having you on, Flash. Great to meet you, bro.
Cass, great to meet you as well, man.
Flash, gonna leave us with one last little pearl of wisdom, man.
Oh man, mine really come off the cuff, Roscoe. Yeah. I don't really have. Just I like to grow where you're planting, man. That's good.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I'll stick with that one. Yeah, that's a great one.
All right.
I like to grow where you're planting.
Cool.
If I tried to come up with something now, it wouldn't really mean a whole lot.
Yeah, something as simple as suck less. Just write that on the back of your lineup card next time. Just suck less. If you can manage to do that, then I think everybody's moving in the same direction. But dude, good to have you on here, man. Great catching back up with you, and we definitely need to do this more often. I really liked when I reached out to you a few weeks ago, and you sent me that text message right back and says, "Dude, I'm 5 minutes into episode 1, and I'm in. I can tell that you guys are trying to do something good here." And I think as far as speaking about men specifically, we need this more often, man. We need to just get around and tell some old stories and have some laughs, and it keeps us young, but I think it's just good health, good mental health for us all, man.
Absolutely. I agree. It's okay. It's okay just to be men. It's definitely okay.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, dude. I mean, we could that could be a whole nother episode about masculinity and all that good stuff. But that's a good point, man. Be proud to be a man. Try to be a good one. It's not easy, but keep trying. All right.
Absolutely.
All right, buddy. Cass,
be the one. Be the change.
Change one.
Thanks for flying with the Be One Change One podcast. If you got something out of this show, then be the one and share it in your circles of influence.
You can be our wingman through our website at www.be1change1.com. That's B and the number 1, change and the number 1.com.
We invite you to be the one and join our fighter squadron on social media at Be1Change1 on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can follow us at Paul Roscoe White on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, as well as Roscoe's website, www.paulroscoewhite.com.
You can email us from the website and please leave comments, share, and ask questions, or leave ideas of things you would like to discuss on future podcasts. Most importantly, be the one that helps us win the algorithm by leaving a review on whatever platform you're listening on.
Thanks for joining. Until next time, be the one.